Good morning, Internet, and welcome to day 4 of the reading rush. So I am way more awake than I was yesterday, which is really good news. I'm already up, awake, dressed, everything. The animals are taken care of, and I finished Practical Magic. So I want to talk about that first. So I'm going to give you my review. Normally I would hold it up here and talk about it, but I don't have a physical copy. So I'm going to throw up some pictures. I will put up the really popular cover that you see on Goodreads and YouTube and, well, not YouTube. I don't think anybody really talks about this book. So you see on Goodreads or Google. And then I will put up the cover that was on my audiobook of what I continued to look at when I was listening to it. So the book, what are my thoughts? Well, I gave it 2 stars, so not great. My problem with the book is it's very long. The pacing is very slow and drug out. There's a lot of detail and information that doesn't seem to go anywhere. The plot is not very apparent. And I know part of that is because I already know a lot about the story going into it. So I'm not just taking it at face value for the first time. But I think I should still be able to enjoy the book somewhat more than I did even after seeing the movie. Because for me, I almost always try to read the book before I see a movie if I really care about reading that book. If I don't care, it's not a big deal. But if I know I want to read that book, I'm going to make an effort to read it or listen to the audiobook before I see the movie so I know the source material. Now, there are a few exceptions to this, like Jane Austen's book club. I read that after I saw the movie. I still enjoyed it, even though it's different. I think number 4, I saw the movie first and then read the book. Still enjoyed it. Obviously not as much as the movie because I think I was influenced by the way they went with the movie. But again, that's a trend with me. If I see the movie first, I'm probably going to like the movie better. However, on both of those occasions, I still enjoyed the book much more than I enjoyed this book. And I didn't give either of those books a 2-star rating. I really feel like there was a great amount of source material, and the way she created these characters were really interesting, but I appreciate the script of the movie much more, of how they took that information, condensed it a little bit, obviously because the movie's shorter, but then made it flow better. And there was a true plot to the movie that there wasn't in the book. And this is where I'm going to get into a little bit of spoiler if you haven't seen the movie, and it's a really old movie. It's over 20 years. I think it's a 22-year-old movie. So I'll throw up a spoiler warning. But in the movie, they start off talking about the ancestor Maria. Now, Maria is in the book. They reference her. She is from the original book. However, they don't talk about her in the same way that they talk about her in the movie. So there's this curse put on Maria that ends up affecting all of her ancestors throughout the movie, and then by the end of the movie they break the curse. And that is the plot of the story, is these women gaining acceptance with who they are and their background, and then being themselves in public and allowing other people to accept them for who they are instead of hiding and being ostracized. So it's not just about the public accepting them. They have to accept themselves first, because if you look at Sally, she's kind of repressive with her magic in the movie, and it takes a whole event for her to really be herself again. So that's not in the book. That plot line is not in the book at all, which is fine. But then I feel like there should be something else there, because then I feel like I'm reading about all these characters and they're getting older, because you start with Sally when she's young. At this point, it's not really a spoiler anymore. But you start with Sally and Jillian when they're young, and they get older. Sally has kids. They get older than they do in the movie. Stuff happens, but it just doesn't feel like it's leading anywhere. Or at least not in the same way. There's not as much depth. So I gave it 2 stars. I really was not a fan of the pacing. or the structure of the book. I felt like it didn't get interesting until the second half of the book. Really, the last quarter of the book piqued my interest with the cop finally becoming a character in the book. And then it wasn't developed the way I thought it would. There just wasn't enough time for any real storyline there, which I understand. It's just my expectations were set at a different level. So I don't know how much of this is the book's fault, but I just wasn't happy with it, I guess. Now, all of that being said, that doesn't mean you shouldn't read this book. Just because I didn't enjoy it doesn't mean you won't enjoy it, especially if you've never seen the movie. So please don't not read this on my account. This is like personal taste. Some people are picky. I may be a pickier reader, or maybe the things that bug me are not going to bug you. So that should not keep you from reading this book. So take everything I say with a grain of salt. But if you're asking my opinion, that is my opinion. So, Animal Farm. I talked briefly yesterday that I had read before bed and I gotten up to page 50, but I didn't really discuss what I had read. I just updated you on my page count. This book is really interesting and it's an easy read. I don't understand why I didn't pick it up sooner. I bought this book when I was in college and I even talked about reading it in college and then never did. So I've had it on my bookshelf forever. And I regret not reading it sooner. It's a very easy read. I highly recommend it. If you're trying to get into classics and you want something that is going to be digestible to you, maybe if you're a teenager or you haven't read in a while and you don't want something super aggressive or a thick text from a dated time where the way people talk is completely unusual to you, I highly recommend this book. And that's with me not even finishing the story. I feel like I know where it's going because it's a classic and I've heard about it. You can kind of tell just where it's going just by reading this far into it as well. And then what else did I do today? I was working in my journal. So I was completing this page right here and I made my haiku about practical magic. I did the Mad Libs about Animal Farm, and then I drew a picture of Snowball from Animal Farm. Honestly, I can't remember what type of pig Snowball is supposed to be, so he may not be a pink pig, but if you notice in my journal, I'm using all of the Reading Rush colors in the book. So with the exception of black, the only colors I'm using are teal, blue, purple, and pink. So that's why the pig is pink. And then I did not really fill out everything from day 2 in this journal. I just did the stats because I knew I would forget them if I didn't write those in. But then I finished the rest of my day 2 stuff. And started working on day 3 because I obviously didn't do that yesterday either. And I haven't started today's at all. So there's cool questions in here, and I thought it would be the same every time, but no, they are different questions. So I'm going to read some of these to you because I find it interesting. So the question from day 1, if you don't have your own journal, was out of your TBR pick, which one might be a 5-star read? Now, when I read this the first time, I either misread it or misinterpreted it because I thought they were asking out of the 2 books that I was reading that day, which one do I think would be 5 stars? And I was like, neither, not right now. I wasn't really vibing with practical magic, and I wasn't far enough in Super Mutant Magic Academy to feel like it was going to be a 5-star book. I'm farther now than I was on that very first day, and I still don't think it'll be 5 stars. But then I reread the question. I was like, oh, it's not asking specifically about the 2 books from day 1. It's the whole TBR list that I made. So out of that, I was like, well, duh, I do have an answer. It's Giant Days. So I picked Giant Days to be my goal for read a book that takes place in a different continent. Now, that being said, speaking of which, Animal Farm does take place in a different continent. It does not take place in North America. I thought that it could possibly. I wasn't really sure. I had a feeling it would take place in Europe, and I was right, but I didn't want to count it as that book just in case I was wrong, since I hadn't read it and I didn't know for sure. So as a backup pick, like, I have Giant Days, which is a comic I've already read like a handful of issues from, but I want to reread the early issues and then get farther because I have all of the singles and I've not read all of the singles. So if I get to that this week, I definitely think that's going to get a 5-star. I know that when I read the first several issues, I gave all of them 5 stars. I loved it so much. So unless John Allison's writing really takes a dive, I don't think my opinion on that book is going to change at all. In case you don't know what I'm talking about, I'll make sure that it's up here so you can see the cover of Giant Days, or at least one of the covers. So yeah, I think that comic would definitely be a 5-star for me. So then day 2, the question was, who is your favorite author and why? Now, if you watched that extraordinarily long video of mine about makeup and books that I posted probably like 8 months ago, I mentioned Sue Grafton and the fact that I've met her like at least 4 times, I feel like, maybe more than that. She is my favorite author right now. Now, if you would have asked me at a different period of time in my life, I might have said a author who shall not be named. But now that I know what kind of person she is, she's not on the list at all, anywhere. And it, you know, it is what it is. I can't change who a person is. I can just choose not to support them. So my favorite author is Sue Grafton. She's always been in my top 5, top 3 favorite authors. I have read almost all of her books. I know she's I know she's written a couple of books that take place outside of the Kinsey Millhone universe. At least one, I want to say. And I haven't read that, but I've read everything in that alphabet series. A is for Alibi all the way to Y is for Yesterday. I've also read her short story book, and I read G is for Grafton, which is kind of like a biography a little bit about her. And I love all of those books. K is for Killer is my favorite, but there are a lot of really good ones. So I have all of those books in hardback at my mom's house. We share that collection, so I can't like hold one of them up for you. So I'll just throw a cover up here so you can see what I'm talking about. But Sue Grafton is not only a classic mystery author, like I would consider her timeless. Even though the books are dated, she started writing them, I believe, in the 80s, so they continue to take place in that time period before we had the amount of forensics we do now, just because it makes the mysteries, I think, a little bit more interesting that Kinsey Millhone is a PI, and she really has to do some sleuthing to solve a mystery. So even though they're dated in that respect, I think reading them, the way they're written is timeless. Like, you're going to enjoy it in another decade or 2. Like, I don't think they're ever going to not be interesting to read. And the audiobooks are really excellent too. Now, the early audiobooks, I believe, are abridged, which is very frustrating. But they've stopped doing that. And so now all the later books are unabridged audiobooks. And she is just like a wonderful person, or she was a wonderful person. She passed away not too long ago, and while she was alive, she was a great supporter of independent bookstores, and I believe she lived in California. Correct me if I'm wrong, but she would drive to Arizona and go to this book store in Scottsdale, and I would travel up to see her over there, and she would sign anything. I mean, I saw people who brought in like 20 books, and as long as you were at the end of the line and not making everybody wait for your 20 books, she would sign them. Like, it's just amazing. And she would sign a bunch of books for the store so they could sell signed books at a later date to people who couldn't make it to the event, or for people who wanted to reserve a book and couldn't make it to the event that evening. And she was always friendly. Like, meeting her several times, she was always friendly. I was not disappointed at all. And I'm just gushing and I need to stop. But yes, I love her. So day 3, the question was, what is your favorite reading snack or drink? So I would say lemonade is just my favorite beverage, period. I love lemonade all day, every day. try not to drink it all day every day because it's not that great for you. But yeah, if you're gonna ask me, what do you want to drink other than water? It's probably going to be lemonade, especially if it's like a fancy lemonade that has like blueberries or raspberries or strawberries or something in it that I don't normally have. And then for snacks, I don't really snack when I read because, I mean, unless it's an audiobook, then it doesn't matter. But if I am like actually physically reading a book, like the way I'm reading Animal Farm, I don't want to get food all over it. I had that happen once where I got like a Dorito thumbprint in one of my books, and it's still there to this day. I just have to live with it, and it bugs me, but it is what it is. It's not coming off the page. So if I was going to snack while reading, and I did this yesterday with Animal Farm, I had some pretzels because they don't seem to be like oily enough to leave fingerprints in your book. So like a pretzel chip or something like that, but something clean and easy that's not going to ruin my book. Ooh, the question for today. So for day 4, what have you been using as a bookmark during the readathon? Well, a bookmark. So this right here. This was given to me, well, given to my husband by the local library. So our libraries are technically open, but you can't go in them. And they have working hours from like 8 to 10 in the morning where you drive up, and they have it all coned off. So you drive up, buy the book deposit, and anything you're returning, you deposit in that big container. And then you keep driving, and they have parking lot slots that are like every other slot. And so they're numbered. They wrote numbers with chalk on them. So then you go park, and then you wait for someone to come to your window, and there will be a librarian or a librarian tech or whoever, a volunteer, somebody will come to the window with a clipboard, and they have like a headset or a walkie or something, and they will ask for your book number, like for your book card. And then whatever you ordered online, like you pre-request your books online, then they will bring it to your car. Obviously, they are wearing masks. You should be wearing a mask. They ask you to pop the trunk so they can just put it in your trunk and not have to touch anything or give anything to you. And then you drive away. So my husband's still been getting movies and books from the library every so often. And what we've been doing is throwing in like a bookmark, usually with each bundle that they send with you. I think last time we got a sticker instead, but yeah, so this is the bookmark I've been using. All right, so the challenges for today. So the first one is the Instagram challenge, which would be take a photo where your book and background match. So I'm gonna work on that, and I will add some footage of me trying to do that and then what it ends up looking like. And then the last bonus video challenge is tell us one of your favorite book memories. Now, I know I just did a bunch of gushing about Sue Grafton and answering all these other questions, but this story is going to be completely different. So I have a bunch of books over here to talk about. I think I mentioned this briefly in a different vlog, but I am dyslexic. I was diagnosed in like 3rd grade, which was around the same time my brother was diagnosed in 1st grade. And then we found out when we were diagnosed at the same time that my mom is also dyslexic. So it runs in our family. I really struggled with reading. I was probably like functionally illiterate for a very long time. And I could read, but phonics didn't really work for me. And I ended up using like whole word, the whole word strategy to learn how to read. That I would like memorize the way a word looked as if it was a picture, and that would help me read, which is not an easy way to learn how to read. But when letters are flipping around in your brain, phonics really, like, I don't want to say it doesn't work, because it does sometimes. It really depends on your situation and what the word is and like what your dyslexia kind of like feels like to you. But it was really difficult to use phonics because the letters would flip. Like a B could look like a P, could look like a Q, or I would try to read a word backwards, and those are like easy signals that you might be dyslexic. So when I was in 5th grade, I had this wonderful teacher named Mrs. Allman, and she was my homeroom 5th grade teacher, and she taught us like history and English, and then we would flip with a different teacher to go do science and math. And Mrs. Allman obviously knew I was dyslexic. She would have had the paperwork on it. Now as a teacher, I understand that she would have known this, having me as her student. And we'd all been in this like process of like, you had to read and do a book report. So what she did for me is she gave me a copy of Walk Two Moons. And I'm sure a lot of you have read this book. It's a very popular middle grade book. Highly recommend it. If you haven't read it, even as an adult, I would totally read it. You can see that it's an award-winning book. This is the John Newbery Award, or the John Newbery Medal that's on the book. So she gave me this book, and then she also gave me an audiobook to go with it. And this is the first audiobook I ever remember listening to. It was on cassette tape. And because I guess it's public school and you don't know what kind of supplies your student's gonna have, she gave me a cassette player to take home. It was real old. It looked like something my grandma might have from like the 80s. To play it on, very old-fashioned, like a deck tape. You know what, I'm gonna try to Google a picture of it to show you what I'm talking about, where it's like a speaker and a deck tape all in one with big chunky buttons shaped like a rectangle. It did not look like a boombox. It was not fashionable in any way. And then she just told me, listen to the book while reading it, okay? And I did that, and I loved this book. It is so good. I have not had a book capture my attention like my whole life the way this one did, because like even books that like helped me become a better reader, like I would say Harry Potter helped me become a better reader. Like I really didn't learn how to properly read a book and understand the context and comprehend everything until I was 13 and read Harry Potter for the first time. However, Walk Two Moons happened before that. So I would have been in 5th grade. I'm probably like 10, and listening to this audiobook while going through the book with my eyes, and it made a really big impact on me, and made me try to start loving books a little bit more and giving them a chance and not hating them so much or feeling like I was being punished because I couldn't read the way other kids were reading. So that experience of listening to that book and reading it for the first time is a memory I will never forget. And I've reread it multiple times since. So if you love Walk Two Moons and you want more of that vibe, definitely check out Chasing Redbird. Now this is like, I would not call it a sequel, but it does take place in the same universe. So while this book is taking place, Sal moves for a period of time away from her hometown. And this book takes place at the exact same moment in the hometown that Sal left. And Zinni is the main character in this book, and she is Sal's friend from back home. If you love Walk Two Moons, you're going to love this. It's the exact same vibe. It has the same voice and texture as that first book. Obviously different characters. They're not gonna have the same personality, but it has the same writing texture. And then my third book to mention, my second recommendation, would be Absolutely Normal Chaos. Now, I'm in the middle of rereading this. So if you really like Walk Two Moons and you remember the part in the book where they turn in their journals from the previous summer before Sal moved to that town, and everybody was getting squirmy because they had to turn in these journals, and the teacher was actually going to read them. And then the teacher did read some of them in front of the whole class. This is one of those journals. So this is taking place the summer before Sal moves to town. And the main character is Mary Lou. And it's just her journal. Everything's written as a journal entry, and it's all about the summer before Sal gets there. And so she's a tangential character in Walk Two Moons. She's not a main character. I wouldn't even call her a supporting character. She's like a side character, but you get to hear way more about this town and what was going on. Still, again, same texture, same vibe as Walk Two Moons. I would say it's a little different because of the writing style being written as a journal, but similar enough that if you love Walk Two Moons, you will most likely like this book as well. So now that I got those recommendations out of the way, yeah, this is just one of my fondest memories when it comes to reading, is this book in 5th grade when I was 10 years old. So, all right, that's it for now. I'm gonna go try to do that Instagram challenge, and then I'll check back in with you. All right, guys, so you might think this is really lazy, but this is what I'm gonna go with. And I think it might look nice once I have it all arranged. But I'm going to use my poetry collection from Lena Norm's, Doom Rolled in Glitter, and a dress that I wore to my cousin's wedding and a couple other events as the background. And then if you look here, this case that I have all my single comics in is like the light blue that's in here. So you've got the purples and the blues. There's no pink in this dress, so I might be missing that, but I think this is my best bet for matching a cover to something that I have in my house without purchasing anything or going crazy. So this is what it's going to be. I'll show you in a little bit what it ends up looking like. All right, so I need to go into town for a few reasons. Number one is to go to my school and print off the paperwork from benefits. I was gonna do it yesterday, and then I realized that today would be a much better day, and I'll tell you why in a second. So I need to print off that paperwork, fill it out, and then drive it to district office and turn it in so that my maternity leave, all of that stuff is taken care of for HR. And then the reason I picked today instead of yesterday is I ordered a commode or an outhouse for the cats. We already have one, but we have 2 cats, and I want a second one. Just to kind of like have this like porta potty vibe, because the litter box is in our master bathroom, which is quite big. There's plenty of room for it, but I don't want to have the litter being kicked around as much as it is now. So I think if we have a second one of those commodes, it will look much nicer and be cleaner in our bathroom. FYI, before I get comments, I don't clean the litter box right now. My husband's in charge of it, and until I'm done with being pregnant, probably, I think we even agreed that he'd do it for like the first month of maternity leave as well, so I wouldn't have to worry about it then either. So yeah, not an issue. So yeah, I need to go into town for that because I accidentally ordered it, and instead of sending it to my house, it sent it to my mom's house. So I need to go pick it up. And that's about it. And then I'll come back into town. So I did do the Instagram challenge. I will put it up right here in case you're interested in what it looked like. I mean, for low effort, I think it looks nice. I know I'm not going to win any prizes, but I like participating. I like giving myself that little check mark. So there's another thing that I did today. And now it's way too hot to be in this car without the air conditioning on. So I'm going to be listening to an audiobook on the way into town, but I got to say goodbye for now. So I am listening to You Can't Touch My Hair and Other Things I Still Need to Explain. And I'll talk about that more later. It's too hot right now. It's too hot. I got to turn on the air conditioning. All right, so I made it home safely. It's a much later, but I did get the cat commode. It took much longer than it should have. I got to my mom's house and the package wasn't there, so I thought I would sit around and wait for it. And I was at least smart enough to drag this with me, my Read a Book Completely Outside of Your House book. So I just sat on her couch wearing my mask, reading this book for actually a few hours, waiting for that package to arrive. And right, like, it was like 1 till 3, and I'm like, I am ready to give up and just go home. I walk out the door, and there's the UPS guy delivering my package. So I got the commode, brought it home. We are good. Rob will put it together this weekend. So let's see. Super Mutant Magic Academy. I gave this book 3.5 stars. If you look at my Goodreads, it's only going to say 3 because they don't do half stars. But I really, really like it. It's just not my type of graphic novel. I prefer a cohesive story or a linear story. This is not bad though. Like, as I said before, the longer you read it, the more the reoccurring characters kind of develop in your brain. You get to know them better. And it does feel like it has a flow to it. And then once you get to, like, I want to say about this much of the end of the book, it starts to be one story where they keep flip-flopping between 2 characters about one that's going to prom and one that's not going to prom. And then they come to an end. So I love the artwork. Most of the artwork, let me find a halfway decent page for you. Most of the artwork is completely black and white, but you will have an occasional page that's in color or has a splash of color. At first it was just like little bits of red, all right? But then there was this page towards the back that's my favorite. I love this one. And I'm cracking the spine showing this to you, which makes me sad, but it is what it is, I guess. But yeah, the art, I love it. It's just, I guess I like a more linear story than this, but it's still genuinely good. Now, I believe I discovered this through Free Comic Book Day. So, Drawn and Quarterly, I think that's what it's called. Yeah, Drawn and Quarterly made this book, and they had a Free Comic Day issue, like a few years back, and I read it, loved it. They had a sample from here, or like, maybe it was just like a demo sample that wasn't actually included in here. I read it, I liked it, then I found out this was coming out, so I bought it. Didn't read it right away, because sometimes you do that when you buy books. Watched one of Ariel's videos, she was talking about it, and I'm like, I really need to read this. And then finally put it on my TBR. So it is done, which means I completed a challenge that had to do with actual reading. So what I noticed is, I actually completed 3 challenges and didn't even realize it. So first off, Practical Magic that I mentioned earlier, that is read a book that inspired a movie you've already seen. Check. This one was read a book completely outside of your house. Check. Now, I did not pick this book intentionally for the Birthstone challenge. I picked Animal Farm for that. However, you will notice that this book is also white, and like I said in my TBR video, born in April. So check. That counts. That doesn't mean I'm not going to read Animal Farm. I'm still going to finish it. But this book does check 2 check marks for me, which is nice. My audiobook, my new audiobook I mentioned briefly in the car, is excellent. So it's called You Can't Touch My Hair and Other Things I Still Need to Explain by Phoebe Robinson. Really good, super funny. I'm only like 5 chapters in, so I'm getting the vibe of the book, and I would say like that's like 1/3 of the book so far. So I anticipate that one being at least 4 stars, and I just can't believe I waited this long to listen to that book. Because I think I've owned it for 6 months to a year when I bought a bunch of other memoirs that were read by the author. And at a certain point, I think I just stopped listening to those. And so that was one that I never got to. And I am so glad that I'm finally listening to it. I wish I would have listened to it sooner, but it's really entertaining. I'm definitely going to finish that. And that will be, I think I picked that book for the first book you touched. So that will be another check mark. I foresee that being done by the end of the week. So I'm going to try to read a little bit more before I go to bed and maybe do one more check-in. But, you know, if I go to bed and don't read anything else, I feel like I had a successful day. So I'll see you guys later. All right, this is the final check-in before I go to sleep. So since I talked to you last, I listened to a little bit more of my audiobook while I was doing the dishes. It's really enjoyable, but I only listened while I was cleaning up a few dishes, so I didn't get very far. I believe I'm on chapter 6 right now. And then I read 10 pages of Lena Norm's Doom Rolled in Glitter. I felt like I needed to read some of this today since I posted it on Instagram as a current read. So that's like about 1/3 of the way done now. Because it's 20 poems about her 20s. And so there's like, it's split into 3 sections, and I read the first section. And then I tried to read more Animal Farm laying in bed, and I read 2 pages before I couldn't keep my eyes open enough to like pay attention to what I should have been reading. So I'm just calling it quits. Time to go to sleep. I will throw up the number of pages I read today. I have no idea what it is off the top of my head. I'm going to need to do some math tomorrow when I edit this to figure out how many pages of my audiobook plus everything else. So that's it. See you tomorrow.